What if a single stealth B-2 bomber appeared in the skies of World War I? The year is 1917. The Western Front. A hellscape of mud, barbed wire, and trenches that stretch from the North Sea to the Swiss Alps. Millions of men are dying over a few hundred meters of poisoned ground. The most advanced flying machines in the world are wooden biplanes made of canvas and wire, held together with glue and prayer, flown by men whose life expectancy in combat is measured in weeks. And then, one grey morning, something crosses the sky that does not belong to this century, or the next, or the one after that. It makes no sound anyone can place. It casts a strange, black, bat-wing shadow across the shell-cratered Earth. It flies higher than any aircraft of the age can climb, faster than anything they have ever seen, and it does not flap, does not sputter, does not trail smoke. It simply glides, vast and silent and wrong, over a battlefield built for a completely different war. A B-2 Spirit, a stealth bomber of the United States Air Force. 100+ feet of radar-absorbing composite, shaped so that the crude detection of its own era can barely see it, let alone the primitive instruments of 1917. It can carry tens of thousands of pounds of bombs. It can strike targets with a precision that the generals below could not even dream of. It is, quite simply, the single most dominant object ever to appear in the skies of the First World War. So the question seems almost silly. What can stop it? And the honest answer is nothing. Nothing in 1917 can touch it. And that is exactly why this scenario is more interesting than it first appears. Because when a weapon is truly untouchable, the story stops being about whether it survives and becomes about something much stranger. What can one perfect, invincible machine actually do to a war of millions, and what is the price hidden inside that power? Let's start with the obvious. In the air, the B-2 is not just superior. It exists in a different reality. The fighter planes of 1917, the Sopwiths, the Fokkers, the Spads, are marvels of their age. They can climb to maybe 20,000 feet on a good day, straining, engines screaming. The B-2 cruises far above that, in air too thin for a biplane to even reach. Even if a pilot somehow saw it and somehow climbed toward it, he would be crawling through the sky at 100 miles an hour while the bomber moved at many times his speed, and his twin machine guns, firing rifle-caliber rounds, would be trying to bring down an aircraft designed to survive the radar-guided missiles of a century in the future. It would be like throwing pebbles at a passing jet. The anti-aircraft guns of the era are no better. They fire shells to burst at a set altitude, aimed by eye and by ear, at aircraft they can see and hear. The B-2 flies above their reach, gives them almost nothing to see, and makes almost no sound to track. The gunners below would be firing blind at a ghost. The most advanced air defense of 1917 is, against this machine, completely worthless. So in the sky, the B-2 is a god, untouchable, unstoppable, free to go anywhere over the entire front, day or night, and no one can lay a finger on it. Picture it from below. A German fighter ace, a man with 20 kills, the pride of his squadron, is on patrol at 15,000 feet when he sees it. A black shape, impossibly large, impossibly high, moving in dead silence across the top of the sky. He does the only thing his training and his courage allow. He climbs toward it, engine howling, nose up, chasing. The shape does not react. It does not turn to fight. It does not even seem to notice him. He climbs until his wings are trembling on the edge of a stall, until the thin air is starving his engine, and still it is far above him, gliding away, unbothered, as if he were an insect trying to reach a passing cloud. He fires anyway, a burst into empty sky that falls short by thousands of feet, and then he watches, helpless, as the impossible thing crosses the front and is gone. He has never, in all his kills and all his fear, felt so completely powerless. He does not have a word for what he has seen, neither will anyone he tries to describe it to. Now what does it do with that power? This is where the scenario gets real. Because raw invincibility in the air is not the same as winning a war on the ground. And the B-2, for all its terrifying power, arrives with a problem that hangs over everything it does. It cannot be replaced. Not the aircraft, not its fuel, not its bombs, not a single bolt or circuit. There is no airbase in 1917 that can service a stealth bomber. There is no fuel refined to the grade its engines need. There is no factory on Earth that can build one more of its precision bombs. Everything it carries once. The B-2 is a weapon with a countdown running on every part of it, and when the countdown hits 0, it becomes the most sophisticated, most useless object in the world, a priceless machine that can no longer fly, sitting in a field 100 years before anyone could understand it. So the pilots, or whoever commands this impossible aircraft, face a brutal question. You have a handful of missions, maybe a few dozen bomb runs before the ordnance is gone, and a limited number of flights before the fuel runs dry. What do you do with the most powerful weapon in history when you only get to use it a few times? The first temptation is to end the war in an afternoon, and the B-2 could in theory do enormous damage. Imagine it over the German lines, releasing a full load of precision bombs onto a concentration of troops, onto an artillery park, onto a headquarters. A single pass could kill more men in seconds than a day of trench fighting. The destruction would be beyond anything the war had ever seen from a single aircraft. But here is the hard truth that the First World War teaches over and over. You cannot bomb your way out of a war of millions with a handful of strikes. The Western Front held tens of thousands of guns and millions of men across hundreds of miles. Blowing up one headquarters, one supply dump, even one entire division is a catastrophe for the enemy, but it is not the end. The line is too long, the army's too vast, the war too deep. The B-2 could win any single moment it chose. It could not by itself win the war, because there is not enough in its bomb bay to kill a war this size. One perfect strike and then another, and then the bombs are gone, and the trenches are still there, still full, still fighting. So if raw destruction cannot win it, the real power of the B-2 lies somewhere else. In two things the men of 1917 have never faced: precision and terror. Take precision first. The generals of the First World War fought partly blind. They planned massive offensives, sent thousands of men over the top, and often did not truly know what was behind the enemy line until the bodies were already falling. The B-2, with its sensors and its perfect view from above, could see everything. Every trench, every gun emplacement, every rail line moving reinforcements, every headquarters, laid out clearly, in a way no commander in that war ever had. Used not as a blunt bomb truck, but as an eye in the sky and a scalpel, the B-2 could tell one side exactly where the enemy was weak, and then remove the single most important target on the entire front, a key bridge, a critical rail junction, the one command center coordinating an entire offensive, with a precision no artillery barrage could match. That is a different kind of power than mere destruction. It is the power to see the whole board when your enemy is playing blind, and to reach out and take the one piece that matters. And then there is terror, and this may be the deepest weapon of all. The men of the First World War were brave beyond imagining. They endured artillery, gas, machine guns, and horrors that broke the mind. But they endured these things because they understood them. They knew what a shell was. They knew what a machine gun did. Their courage was built on a world that, however terrible, made sense. The B-2 makes no sense to them at all. A silent black shape that appears from nowhere, that no gun can reach, that no plane can catch, that strikes with impossible accuracy and vanishes. To a soldier of 1917, this is not a weapon. It is something out of a nightmare or a religious vision. Rumors would race through the trenches faster than any bomb, the devil's own aircraft. A judgment from the sky. An angel of death that chooses its victims and cannot be fought, cannot be seen, cannot be stopped. An army that has never conceived of such a thing does not just take casualties from it. It comes apart at the seams of its own morale. Men who would stand firm under a hurricane of shells might break and run from a silent shadow they cannot understand, because the human mind can endure a known horror far better than an unknown one. The B-2's greatest weapon might not be its bombs at all. It might be what the mere sight of it does to the will of an entire army. Imagine the first strike from inside the German lines. It is a normal morning, as normal as mornings get in that war. Men are cleaning rifles, brewing coffee, waiting. There is no warning. No engine drone building in the distance the way it always does before a raid, no spotter's cry. Just suddenly, the middle of the supply depot behind the lines erupting, a rail junction that was solid steel 1 second and a crater the next, with a precision that no artillery in the world could manage. And by the time anyone looks up, there is only a black shape already sliding away over the horizon, silent, gone. No one saw it come, no one heard it, no one could have stopped it. The survivors do not tell each other it was a bombing raid. They tell each other something worse, something they whisper, something about a thing in the sky that chooses who dies and cannot be fought. That story spreads down the trench line faster than any order from any general, and it does more damage than the bomb. But, and this is the honest heart of the whole scenario, none of this changes the fundamental problem. And the bombs and the fuel run out no matter how cleverly they are used. Whatever the B-2 achieves, it achieves in a narrow window, and then it is spent. And there is a weight on whoever commands this machine that has nothing to do with fuel or bombs. They know how the war ends. They know which battles are coming, which offensives will fail, where the millions will die. With a handful of perfect strikes, they could try to shorten the whole nightmare, to knock out the key points, to end an offensive before 100,000 men walk into machine guns. But every strike that saves lives on one side takes them on the other, and no one handed them the right to decide the fate of a war that was already written. They are gods for a few weeks, with the power to bend history and only a few chances to do it, and no way to know whether bending it makes things better or worse. That is a heavier burden than any bomb load, so imagine how it might really play out. The B-2 arrives, and for a short time it is an absolute god of the sky. It sees everything. It strikes the targets that matter most, a critical rail hub here, a headquarters there, breaking an offensive before it begins. It terrifies an entire front, sends morale into freefall, and hands one side a series of impossible advantages. For a few weeks, the war bends around this single impossible machine. And then the bomb bay is empty, and then the fuel gauge reads 0. And the most advanced aircraft ever built glides down one last time to a field in France and comes to rest, silent and perfect and finished, 100 years out of its time. Its crew climbs down into a world of horses and biplanes, carrying knowledge that could change everything and a machine that will never fly again. and the war goes on. Changed, perhaps. The advantages the B-2 brought might shorten it, might shift a battle or a campaign, might save tens of thousands of lives by ending an offensive early or knocking out a key point. But the war does not simply stop because a miracle crossed the sky. Wars of that size are not decided by one machine, no matter how perfect. They are decided by millions of men and rivers of supply and the slow grinding arithmetic of nations throwing everything they have at each other until one side can no longer stand. That is the real lesson buried inside this fantasy. Absolute superiority in one machine is dazzling, and it is real, and it can achieve incredible things in the moment. But a single perfect weapon with a countdown is a spark, not a fire. It can change where the war goes. It cannot alone decide whether the war is won. The most invincible aircraft in history, dropped into the deadliest war the world had yet seen, would have been a terrifying, unstoppable, unforgettable ghost in the sky. And it still could not have carried enough thunder in its belly to end a war that swallowed an entire generation. Untouchable is not the same as unstoppable at everything. The B-2 could not be beaten. But it could run out. And in a war of millions, running out is the only defeat that matters. Of course, this is completely a what-if scenario, one of those questions that is fascinating to turn over before falling asleep. But it makes you think. If you had the most perfect weapon in history, but only a handful of times to use it, in a war of millions, what would you aim it at? Write your answer in the comments. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. See you in the next one.